Imagine two peasants so poor they can barely put food on the table. But then one day, they get a letter from the king, and it could change everything for them. The king wants them to join his war, but in return, he's offering them all the riches they can imagine. Anything they see on their journey is theirs for the taking. In the 1963 film Les Carabiniers, these two peasants dream of swimming pools, luxury cars, and a suitcase full of fortune when they return home. Of course, they accept. But when the war finally ends and they come marching home to show their wives what they've collected, they open their suitcase in front of them, but their wives are puzzled. The peasants proudly present a stack of postcards.
On est riche.
These postcards are just snippets of somewhere they visited. The pyramids of Egypt, the Karnak stones, the Pantheon. It turns out all of their spoils of conquest are, well, just pictures. What this is a great parody. A parody that's meant to remind us that the world we've been promised so often, well, often it really only exists in images or in postcards that we collect. Today, an average US citizen takes about 20 photos every single day. And users share 14 billion images on social media every day. It's no surprise that the act of taking a picture is playing a bigger and bigger role in our lives. But in our quest to capture our life in pictures, are we ending up with a life lived or a suitcase full of postcards? I recently read a great essay called In Plato's Cave that was written by the late philosopher Susan Sontag. Now, Sontag definitely thinks very critically about photography. One of the things that really got me thinking from her essay was how she equates taking a photo to what happens in Plato's cave allegory. Just as a refresher, if you're like me and you probably forgot your high school philosophy, the cave allegory is basically about how people are trapped in their own limited understanding of reality, only seeing shadows of the truth on the wall of their caves, until they can break free from the cave and experience the real world. Sontag says that when it comes to photography, we often linger in our own caves like this. But instead of these shadows that we think are the whole world, we're actually staring at a wall that's plastered with pictures that we've taken. And in this cave, we convince ourselves that by looking, somehow we know this place that we see in the pictures. So photography, well, to Sontag, she's kind of hinting at how it might be a trap, keeping us in the cave. A way to engage with the world, but without really engaging. And this is exactly how she begs us to think about photos. Not as memories, but more like placeholders, like postcards, so to speak. Thinking of a picture like this, not like a captured moment, but as something that stands in for a moment in our lives, the picture might start to feel more like a stolen moment that was never really lived, but just, well, it was just captured. I think it's also worth noting that she wrote this essay back in 1977, before the internet and social media, and before we carried around our smartphones in our pockets everywhere, just waiting to capture what we see with a flick of the thumb. In Sontag's time, the photography industry was nothing like it is compared to today. This thing that we do so often now, take pictures of everything, it's almost become the go-to thing, like the de facto action that we do when we see something we want to remember.
Nostalgia. It's delicate, but potent. Sweetheart.
Remembering, capturing memories. Is that actually why we take pictures? Well, photography and memory, they've been linked for a long time, but the origin of this link might make you reconsider the idea.
Movies. Home movies by Kodak. Couldn't give a nicer gift, if I do say so myself.
It comes from the company Kodak, which built its entire brand on the idea that pictures could preserve memories forever. For example, in their early ad campaigns, they said that there's only one perfect memory, the Kodaks. And later, their ads claimed that snapshots remember when you forget. We can trace this idea of a photo being the perfect way to capture a memory all the way back to the 1920s, when Kodak's ads made it seem like taking a photo was the key to overcoming our forgetfulness. This carefully constructed advertising seems to have stuck with us.
New Gold 3, Kodak's sharpest, most colorful film ever.
But are these snapshots really helping us remember? Well, in short, not really. Recent research suggests that when we take a picture, we actually pay less attention to the experience itself. In a sense, offloading the responsibility of remembering to our devices. Scientifically, this is something called cognitive offloading, and it basically describes how we're handing over the job of our memory to the camera, thinking we can come back to it later. But so when we do that, we're losing something in that moment. It's that something with the sound of birds or the smell of coffee that all of our senses pick up and is on a whole different level of real than a picture can ever capture. Now, I don't think that taking a photo is a bad thing in and of itself, and neither did Sontag. For example, taking photos as a creative outlet, as art, well, it is just that, a creative outlet, and I think that's great. And of course, there's images of war that history has shown can be a really effective way for people to see the really horrible things that go on someplace else.
Okay, roll in that little creek there. We're taking fire out of there.
In 1950, for example, around 9% of Americans owned a TV. But in 1966, 93% owned one. In just 16 years, suddenly everyone was watching TV. The Vietnam War was the first big conflict to be broadcast into people's homes. It was often called the television war, exactly because it showed the American people what was going on right there on the battlefield from their living rooms every single night. Images of war photos shown on TV like this definitely help shape people's opinions and emotions towards the atrocities of the war, and might have made them take action or mobilize against it. But there is a difference between that and the very menial way a lot of us take photos now, with our smartphones especially. It feels more like a habit than anything else. And it's a habit that's probably been born from all these carefully constructed ads that we've seen throughout our lives. Kodak might not be the big player in photography anymore, in guiding our thoughts, but when you think of an iPhone, for example, I'm sure one of the first reasons you would want to get one is because it has a great camera. Or take the Google Pixel. One of its desired features is to take and edit beautiful photos. These companies, like Apple, are still very much guiding our thoughts on what it means to take a picture, basically so they can sell us a product. But why is it that they've been so successful with these campaigns, and why is it, in more general terms, that the photography industry has been so good at selling cameras to people? In other words, why do we want these postcards? Well, Sontag, she thinks it's about control. For her, taking a picture is a way to own the world piece by piece, without the messiness of actually being in it. She said that snapping a photo is to appropriate a moment. It's almost like claiming ownership over it. Moments that are otherwise transient and inherently slippery, right? Because when we do take a photo, if you really think about it, we aren't just capturing a moment, we're freezing it in time and stopping it from continuing on its way. Okay, so just imagine here the classic tourist with their camera or phone in their hand, walking around taking picture after picture after picture, and then later looking back at them to show themselves or maybe their friends what they saw. To quote Sontag directly, photographs will offer indisputable evidence that the trip was made, that the program was carried out, and that fun was had. For this tourist then, the camera feels more like a shield than anything else. It's almost a way to safely stay on the periphery of an experience so they don't actually have to engage with it, right? I'll quote Sontag here again because this one is a bit contentious, but also pretty funny. She says that most tourists feel compelled to put the camera between themselves and whatever is remarkable that they encounter. Unsure of other responses, they take a picture. This gives shape to experience. Stop, take a photograph, and then move on. The method especially appeals to people handicapped by a ruthless work ethic, Germans, Japanese, and Americans. Using a camera appeases the anxiety which the work-driven feel about not working when they're on vacation and supposed to be having fun. They have something to do that is like a friendly imitation of work. They can take pictures. Okay, even though I don't think that it's just Germans, Japanese, and Americans who are the only ones doing this now, what does that really tell us about our relationship with taking photos? Well, let's imagine ourselves as this tourist for a moment. If we go and see the pyramids in Egypt or, whatever special thing it is we want to take a picture of, our first tendency has become to grab the camera or phone and experience the sight through the lens, rather than with our own eyes or all of our other senses for that matter. But in that moment, when you see the pyramids through the lens, it degenerates the experience to be only this framed, two-dimensional, visual representation of that moment, as a neat little package stored for later enjoyment. And because of that, we don't really preserve the memory, at least not as fully as we could have if we'd been, present. Which is pretty ironic too, considering the whole reason we probably chose to take that picture in the first place was to remember it. No. Instead, the picture becomes this thing we own in our phones. And it's not that memory, it's a distorted image of that memory. An object to be paraded around and put on display. In many of our modern lives, to visit a place has become to take a picture of it. Because we want to prove that that thing we did, it really happened. And essentially, that means that we're trading our presence in that moment for proof of that moment. We trade being there for the idea of having been there. This tourist who clicks away and away, seen from this perspective, they really just collect things that were never experienced. To Sontag, this tourist has become a collector of absence. And they put their collection up on display on their cave wall. Ah yes, our cave walls. Now it's more like our social media feeds, right? They're filled with images of spaces we've seen. And it doesn't really matter what the specific picture depicts either. It could be a sunset over a mountain or even the faces of friends at a party you went to a few years ago. Their function remained the same. It's basically to prove that we were there. And now we put it in our digital albums to preserve and parade.
Put your phones down.
With all this in mind, why is it so hard not to take a picture then when we see something worth remembering? More than the idea of proof, Sontag also suggests that to be truly present in a moment is to be vulnerable. Being present is to risk boredom and discomfort. Being present is to acknowledge that some experiences are fleeting and that they can can't really be owned, they can only be lived. But this reality can be unsettling in our world that prioritizes consumption, even of experiences now, over everything else. A lot of the time I'm on social media, it feels like the whole thing has become about consuming like the golden hour magic picture or whatever. Just like we would consume a meal, we want to taste it, savor it, and then move on when we're satisfied and full. And one of the reasons I wanted to make this video, and one of the most interesting parts of this for me anyway, is that, well, it's not just about the act of taking a photo anymore. It's also about the way we deal with those photos now. Thinking back to that old French movie I showed you in the beginning, social media is also like our suitcase now. It's filled with digital postcards, curated feeds where we don't present who we are, but who we want to be. But when we post that sunset on our feed, or maybe like ironically the imperfect coffee cup, just to show how relatable we are, that's an act of self-creation, a tiny little fiction that contributes to the narrative of our own making. Just think of all the people, mostly younger people, who communicate through apps like Snapchat. On Snapchat, users send photos back and forth, sometimes of nothing in particular, just to maintain a snap streak, a count of how many consecutive days two people have exchanged snaps or pictures. This weird gamification of communicating, well, it's turned photography into this social currency almost, but at the expense of genuine, spontaneous human interaction. Now, of course, since I'm interested in tech, I gotta mention AI here too. With the latest phones, AI isn't just some buzzword either. It's built right into our camera apps. New features can make every shot look incredible without us even trying. Or, how your phone can automatically adjust the lighting, smooth out imperfections, or make the colors pop in your photos. Or now it can even erase that random person who walked into your shot, all with a really simple tap. That's all algorithms, making your photos look way better. This isn't an ad for that, by the way, because although these features seem amazing, with every new upgrade to our camera app, we're tempted to take even more photos. After all, why wouldn't we? Our phones practically guarantee that every shot will look great. But let's just think about why these features exist in the first place. The tech companies behind this sort of AI stuff, I'm guessing they know that by giving us tools to create perfect photos, pretty effortlessly, we'll be more inclined to use our cameras, and by extension, their services too. It's really a very clever strategy when you think about it. The more photos we take, the more we need more storage in their cloud services, so we'll buy that too. Back when Kodak started advertising photography, they sold us the idea that taking photos was the key to remembering our lives. Now, companies in the industry are also selling us the idea that our lives can and should look perfect. And they're providing the tools to make it happen too, all while encouraging us to keep taking more and more pictures. And there's a whole set of negative outcomes from this too. One of them is the rise of so-called influencers on social media. Now, when social media began, people were mostly interacting with their friends only. Nowadays, though, people are interacting way more with people they don't even know than their friends, these influencers. And these influencers, they post luxurious pictures online because they have a real financial incentive to do so. They create perfect-looking posts, take unrealistic pictures of an unrealistic lifestyle, so they can make money from it, or fame, or whatever it is. And as a side product, this makes their followers want to be like them, always trying to frame and commodify their moments in life, ultimately so they can sell some product on their wall. Tech companies, maybe not openly, now seem to be selling the idea that anyone can be like this influencer. But at what cost? Okay, let's get out of our caves, shall we? And think about how we can use Sontag's ideas to change our relationship with photography for the better. Like I said, I don't think taking a picture is a bad thing in and of itself. It's way more complicated than that. Photos can be valuable, even powerful. They can capture a feeling or help us look back on something important. And on a broader level, they can change public opinion for the better. But there is a balance here. I think we need to be more mindful of when we're using photography as a crutch to avoid being fully present. Are we just taking pictures because we don't want to engage with what's happening right in front of us? Like Sontag suggested, are we just hiding behind the lens when we do so? I think that's a good starting point for incorporating these ideas into our lives. Just being more deliberate with it. Thinking twice before reaching for our phones. Maybe next time you do reach for it to take a picture, pause for a second and consider this. Are you trying to hold on to a moment, or are you letting the camera do the work of remembering for you? Is capturing this moment more important than just experiencing it? Sometimes it's worth letting the memory be just that, a memory, and to let the moment happen without trying to freeze it or even sell it. Maybe we should let go of the proof more often. There's, of course, no hard rule here, though. Sometimes the photo is worth it. But let's face it, we're not all photojournalists taking that picture that'll change the world or our lives. If you watched till now and you want to keep watching, here's my last video where I really go into AI images and how they're changing journalism in particular. Also, I can't tell you how motivating it is to read your discussions and feedback in the comments. So if you want to support me so I can keep making these videos, consider subscribing and liking this video. It really helps. And you can join my Patreon too and get an ad-free experience of my videos along with the script and other stuff. Thanks for watching.